Okay, everyone, thank you very much for joining us. I'm very excited that we'll continue now with a fascinating conversation on digital wallets. Today we'll be hearing from Mr. Roy Friedman, Executive Director for Strategy and Policy at the INCD. In this role, he's responsible for devising Israel's national cyber strategy and regulation in the field. Before taking on this position, Roy was Biometric Applications Commissioner at the INCD. And joining us from Belgium today is Mr. Jan Vanhaecht, who is a partner at Deloitte Consulting and Technology and leads Deloitte's global digital identity practice. Jan is recognized as one of the world's foremost experts in the field of digital identity. In this role, Jan guides international organizations through processes of innovation, digital transformation, and the adoption of advanced digital identity solutions, with a particular emphasis on developing and implementing digital wallets. Jan's extensive experience includes advising governments, financial institutions, and leading technology companies with a focus on information security, user privacy, and creating an innovative customer-citizen experience. Please, Roy.
So, hello, Jan. Thank you for joining us for this special session at the Cyber Conference, Reflections on the Digital Wallet. This topic is a personal favorite of mine, and I've been following it for quite some time, I think over 10 years, and we would very much like to see such a digital wallet materialize here in Israel. In recent years, we've witnessed a rapid shift in how digital identity is handled and how citizens engage with digital services. The concept of a digital wallet is becoming a central element in this discourse, with enormous potential to reshape trust, accessibility, and individual control over personal data. To help us better understand global trends, challenges, and opportunities, we're pleased to welcome Jan Vanhaecht, Global Digital Identity Leader at Deloitte. Thank you, Jan. Of course, with extensive experience advising governments, regulators, and companies, Jan is at the forefront of global activity in this field. So I'll start with some questions. And Jan, let's start with the basics. When we talk about a national digital wallet, what exactly do we mean? And what makes this emerging European regulation around digital wallets so unique?
Yes, thank you very much, Roy, and thank you everyone for having me. Apologies first of all for not being able to be there in person. I'm very much missing out on the best part, probably meeting up with everyone. But very honored that you have me dialed in here. So thank you for the flexibility. The topic of digital wallets, I think it is really a fundamental shift in our thinking on how we interact with individuals via digital channels, and it's going way beyond, I think, any of the concepts and of the ways of dealing with persons and identity than what we've seen before. The European journey, maybe to start from that one, indeed a couple of steps back, there's multiple generations that we can see. I think a very early version was obviously just interacting from primarily government side with individuals. Where as a citizen, you were typically being confronted with multiple log-on IDs, with multiple identifiers you needed to retain, with multiple passwords in principle that you were then using across those sites, which in practice led to the common effect that everyone is just using the same password across these different services just to keep it handy and to be able to remember your interaction. And that was somewhat normal as well, because obviously from a citizen perspective, you often, and probably you shouldn't, have any idea of the complexity of a government organization, just like you wouldn't need to know all of the complexity of certain commercial organizations at the same time. So it should be pretty ubiquitous. And so that's the first step that was taken, coming to a single entry point, a single port, a single gateway to access these different services. That was still very much organized on a national level. So, for example, in Belgium, I'm based in Brussels, Belgium, so we are we were very much an early adopter with electronic identity cards and providing a single sign-on experience, as it's then called, a single gateway into governmental services. Now, in different countries, similar environments were arising and similar technologies and setups were being used, but each time restricted to the citizens of that individual country. And so by about 2010, we, in Belgium at least, we had the first real business need to cater digital interactions with non-citizens, people not even living in Belgium at that point in time. So people living abroad needed, with different nationalities, needed access to the Belgian government services. And so we started looking for ways to make that possible, and that's where a first network originated, which in those days was referred to as STORK, S-T-O-R-K, which was an interaction, a collaboration between those different single sign-ons or different portals or different identity providers on a European scale. And that is now evolving further to truly coming to a common infrastructure, a common joint approach to dealing with identities. And that is now evolving instead of just launching a single quote-unquote European identity, which obviously politically is a very sensitive topic and is probably something that we're not ready yet to embark on that. And that's where we're at least starting from a common infrastructure where we still retain the sovereignty of each individual member state, their own ways of making it forward, but where interoperability between different government agencies, different nations, but also cross government into businesses is at the heart of the whole design.
So thank you, Jan. And so would you say we're entering a new era in digital identity? And if so, what role does the digital wallet play in this breakthrough?
Yeah, so if you look indeed at just from a data ownership perspective, it's always an interesting debate, and it's very quickly it becomes a little bit philosophical maybe, but who really owns your identity is a big question that is always being asked. If you look at it, I'm announced here as Jan Vanhaecht, so that's nice. Everyone, seems to be a somewhat global agreement that the person that's talking to you has the reference name of Jan Vanhaecht. But who actually decides upon the fact that I am indeed Jan Vanhaecht? Is it really me as an individual? Or if you actually look at it, it's probably rather a government agency where somewhere, at least in the European scheme, there is a central registration of a picture of certain identification attributes of mine, which then are known and labeled as Jan Vanhaecht. And today I'm actually existing as Jan Vanhaecht at the grace of the Belgian government, who owns a record that states that I'm indeed Jan Vanhaecht. If suddenly I want to be called Jack Vanhaecht for whatever reason, I will actually have to ask permission to the government to update my reference name, and there will have to be a new issuing happening of the fact that the person who is now talking to us from tomorrow will be known as Jack Vanhaecht and no longer Jan Vanhaecht. So it actually, a lot of that ownership of that data now sits with a government agency, and that's actually also how we've been building our digital government structures in many countries. Is really depending on authoritative sources, is then often on reference databases where that data is being stored. And that's limiting to a certain extent the use of that data because it's owned by government and it's not always publicly available in the business context. At the same time, it's also limiting government, because not all of the commercial data maybe that is residing with insurance companies, with banks, with whatever kind of institution you can think of, is also not always made available in a practical way towards governments for a whole set of good reasons. And at the same time, me as an individual, I probably can add a number of data points that I now each time have to provide again to the organizations I'm interfacing with. And so what the wallet is actually doing is bringing all of that world together, allowing to issue a central anchor point that is reflecting me as an individual, which is then often referred to as the PID, the pit, really the core, the root of my, the seeds of my being. And attached to that one, my whole ecosystem, my whole personality can be linked into my wallet. Obviously, creating a couple of potential risks on all of that data, my whole universe becoming known to the whole world and potentially being abused. So hence, where there is a lot of focus on privacy aspects, on putting me as an individual also in control over what data I'm actually sharing with those different institutions. And that will lead, and that's a huge step forward and a big change that is about to come also from business interaction, but also from an IT architecture perspective. We will need to adapt our back office, our systems into not just relying on an entry in a database, but on data that is being provided almost at the moment that it's needed. As part of that transaction, I will be feeding my data cards, like the good old business cards. I will give my business card as part of the start of the transaction, and you will need to use that data on the fly, which is beneficial because you have accurate data. Also from a risk perspective, can be very beneficial because you won't need to retain that data and the evil hackers can't just breach a whole database. But it is a significant shift that will need to happen, making my life as a citizen easier because I have everything at hand, but also from businesses, governments, somewhat easier because you will be able to get a lot more data under the control of the user, but in a very confined, constrained way of making that possible.
Okay, and Jan, since this is a global trend, what do you see? Where do you see the development going and the adoption of those digital wallets?
Yeah, and it is indeed. Up until now, we've been very much talking from a European quote-unquote perspective, but we are indeed seeing the same trend happening both on the side of the Americas, but then also the same similar effects happening in Asia. Actually, it's really a global evolution that is taking place. So interoperability will be absolutely important. Because at the end, what we're trying to emphasize, and we did quite some interesting work with a financial institution as well, that really sees the digital wallet and the digital identity side as the enabler of a truly global digital economy. There are no borders, so to speak, on the internet. Also on the identity front, it goes way beyond than who I am. We want to make it effective, efficient. So there's a whole exercise going on, of course, on standardizing these ways of working, open standards arising. Where at the end of the day, it should allow us indeed to have a more open way of buying and procuring goods, but also providing services on a very international cross-border scale, while still retaining the same level of certainty and assurance that you now have on that you are actually really dealing with the Jan Vanhaecht you think you are dealing with, which in this video link is hard to verify maybe, but that is then the additional link that you would be able to get. You would have a guarantee that I am indeed who I claim to be, and also an AI avatar, for example, that is speaking to you at this very moment.
Yes, so we were just talking about deepfakes in the previous session, and I certainly hope that this is not Jan's deepfake, and if it is, it's doing a good job. When a country like Israel is shaping its national policy on digital wallets, what guiding principles should be taken into account? And what would you say are the key considerations in terms of technical, ethical, and operational issues?
I think the most important part to me, there's two big angles. There's of course a viability angle of this solution. You need to make sure that it keeps working. This is the re-engineering you will need to do, but also the dependency you will start to have on a national digital identity scheme will be enormous. Also, if you look at it from just from a balance side, all of my government interactions, even my interactions with my telco providers, are all based on my single digital identity that I am putting forward. So our whole economy is really getting significantly dependent on the concept of a digital wallet or a digital identity, hopefully soon then the wallet side. So that is a huge responsibility that you're carrying. That means that it's a responsibility not just from making something that is technically secure, where, honestly, there's a couple of challenges, but technology well advanced on making sure that there is adequate cryptographic protection, etc. in place. So that's worked on that front. But also where you have a huge responsibility on sustaining the solution on a longer term. Because it will be extremely disruptive at some point in time when it turns out that your solution maybe is provided based on a vendor or a third party that is not viable anymore, that is being procured by somewhat of a less friendly nation state, and that then suddenly owns your identity, or where there's suddenly a huge commercial play and where there is risk of starting to abuse the data set that is being provided for purely commercial needs. So there's a huge number of risks that are linked to it as well. And so part of you now on the policy side, I think, is very much making sure that you find a good balance between interoperable technology side, which still allows a certain amount of interaction and interfacing and a somewhat open playground, while at the same time making sure that those core data that you're holding, really the true digital identity, single identity of individuals is well protected. And that's a difficult balance, because at the same time the viability will also depend on the number of participating parties in this whole ecosystem. You're not building a whole ecosystem with just one provider and one consumer of that identity. The objective, like we see in almost all of the geographies, is to really open up the usage of that personal data, also government, commercial, non-profits, all of those organizations coming together to tap into that source of identity. And so making sure that you have sufficient people that are subscribing to the service, that are using and have a verified digital identity available for use, that will depend on the breadth of services that they will be able to consume thanks to this digital identity that they now have, otherwise they won't register. And at the same time, if you don't have a lot of subscribers ready, no one will start consuming the data. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg problem in your head, and I think that's the second part, apart from the policy setting side and setting all of those guardrails and openness in place. The second part is to also accelerate and give incentives to government agencies, but also certain commercial players probably, to start the adoption and to get this whole flywheel really going and make sure that it connects to one another, the supplies of digital identities and the demands of relying parties, that those two find one another. I think that's a real challenge
Yes.
each time again in each of the countries to make work.
So indeed, this is a challenge that we encountered here in Israel, this chicken and egg cycle that you mentioned with our national digital ID and other projects, is that sometimes the services don't follow, and then the demand for the digital ID isn't high enough. So I agree, it's a very good point. We're already used to digital wallets developed by tech giants like Google and Apple. How do you see the relationship between these private wallets and the public national digital wallet? In the future, do you envision a single wallet for everything, or will we continue to manage multiple ones?
Yeah, that's a very, very hot topic, actually in a very quote-unquote heated but constructive debate also with a couple of policymakers in other countries on exactly that setting. So very much from a personal side, this one. So my personal opinion as a big disclaimer, first of all. I do think that there is a seed that needs to happen, and we have a true good anchor point that we need as a digital identity that is me and claimed and just me. That is undeniable, not only on the deepfake side, but also identity theft, etc. That anchor point is absolutely crucial. At the same time, if you look at the number of constraints that are required to make that happen, and also to make sure that we protect our average citizen, you need to be very honest on that one, of course. We're here in a group of the Cyber Week, so we can assume good technical savviness to a certain extent in this group, and making sure that we're all quite comfortable in using digital means. But that is not the reality when you step out of the door, of course. A huge part of your population has much higher fear or uncertainty and distrust even on digital means. So you will need to make sure that you can also build a technology that is usable, but is also protecting the average user, which might not be as savvy as we are in this room maybe, but that we actually protect our society and have certain hurdles, barriers that we put in place to avoid abuse of data. Think on crypto keys, but also just on who can access which data, access control rules, all of those things will also need to be baked in. By definition, that will limit the usability, not the user experience side, but the viability of the solution in a number of cases. Not all of the commercial parties, not all of the entities around, you will allow to actually tap into that data. And to think on some of the big tech providers, you probably will not want to trust that bit into a wallet that is provided by any of those big tech players, that if we're very honest, we have no control over what is happening and how they are really managing that data. So that's where I see indeed kind of a two-layer model in place. There is a core model that is strictly controlled, really a vaulted, well-protected digital identity with strict usage guidelines on the one hand, and then there is for me a shell around it with more open, a much more open system where it's much freer what data goes in and out of those outer layer wallets, so to speak. And that's where I see the current type of wallet plays rather in that outer circle, less in that core, well, decently and very thoroughly protected core that we're usually talking to. So that will mean that as an average user, you will probably have more than one wallet you need to manage, and where you will be able to put certain data on, kind of a high trust environment, and a somewhat lower trust, but very user-friendly and very convenient outer layer that is out there. So I think that's what I see the world providing to that two-layer kind of model.
I completely agree, and as experts, we completely realize what you say, and I wonder what the average person, it is my gut feeling that usually they have no problem trusting the big tech, Google and Apple, with their sensitive information. And what we're saying here, well, they hear it, but they don't really see the risks the way that we do. Well, so before we conclude, I'd like to open it to the floor for the people here, for the audience. If you have any questions for Jan, we can take just 2 questions, I would say, and then we'll conclude, if that's okay with you, Jan. Yes, please. Just and please present yourself when you speak.
Hello, Jan. Hello. My name is Erez Simon. My question, you spoke of the viability of the solutions, and I am curious about the economical viability, which is coupled within the question of viability itself. You spoke of the supply and the demand, what it would cost, what's the business model or the economical model behind the digital wallet? What would it cost the service providers who wish to authenticate their own clients, their customers, and what would it cost the government itself to provide the service? And perhaps in certain use cases, the consumer himself who wishes to authenticate, maybe he would have to be liable for some certain costs. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Again, a very hot topic. I spent my yesterday evening reviewing a report as it's very specifically addressing this question on business models around wallets for one of the government's clients that I have. So that should soon be published. So look forward to something popping up somewhere in the world, specifically on digital wallet business models. Sneak preview for the thinking goes, of course. In order to make sure that we get adoption, we need a user base. And the user base in terms of citizens, and what we've seen, the average citizen on the internet has been highly spoiled with free identity providers. You probably do not want to pay to have your identity established and proven somewhere. So things on the free Facebook account where everyone thinks that it's given free LinkedIn users. So you as an end user probably are expecting a free service. So that's one source of income that disappears. Which means that there are two big clusters left. Either we expect the government to fund all of this magical system at a quite significant cost, where there might be a number of benefits on government side as well, having a single identity, having a more secure, trusted identity, more interoperability, probably offers a couple of benefits just within the ecosystem of the government. And so I've seen cases in multiple countries, both APAC and Europe primarily, but also, for example, Canada, where there is a clear return on investment just from a government perspective, issuing a citizen identity, which then reduces costs and reduces risk sufficiently for other government agencies to be worth the investment. And as there is a return on investment from government side, why not open it up to the rest of society to then also tap into that potential? Works from for wallet sides, that type of thinking, but then why would any commercial parties be releasing their data into the wallet? Because that's the real value that sits there. Right? Think of the classical case that is always being used. If you want to hire a car now on your holiday, you take in to provide an identity card, a driver license, and potentially some proof of insurance. The first two are government owned, so that is clear in my previous example. But the fact that you have an insurance certificate is not part of the government data. So some insurance company should issue you with a statement that you indeed have insurance that covers also rental cars. That is just a setting. So why would they do it? And so there needs to be a cashback model at that point in time, where maybe the car rental company gives a small fee into the insurance company in order to be able to rely on that data, and where then also that insurance company takes on liability to provide that data and on the fact that they make that claim, that there is no fraudulent case in that front. And how we make that interaction, that cashback model, how to make that work, that is the real key. That is now the topic of a lot of debate. For the simple reason that you also want to protect the privacy of the individual. So if you provide that data somewhere, that insurance company will know that you're trying to hire a car in some country and might be able to make some analysis on that one. So we're looking at a system of intermediaries, of brokers that would need to be set up that will actually be the go-between and kind of a clearing house for those types of payments between the providers of data and the consumers of that data, while still protecting the privacy of the individual that is actually being used. So that's very, very short version of the thinking that I see happening in multiple corners of the world.
Thank you, Jan. And we're about to wrap up, but just a quick last question. What advice would you give Israel to deliver real value to our citizens and our economy when embarking on a digital wallet?
I think my core advice is take a leap of faith, go for it, make it happen. I think that's also something we've seen in every country. It takes a bit of courage to make the step and provide things to your citizens. There will be some hesitation at the start, but people will start to use it, will start to feel the benefit of it, and will start taking it for granted before you even realize it. So the leap is really worth it. Go for it, make sure that you build that balance in with sufficient protection on the technology side. Don't make it overly complex and allow an economical playing field in there as well. Open it up for use really the average awareness with your user, not only purely on digital side, on digital identity side, but also more from a broader cyber awareness side. The amount of frauds drastically goes down. There's quite some research being done there where those fraud numbers are really dropping in the geographies, in the countries where digital identity exists. So this is should be a no-brainer. I think this is a no-regret move, but it takes a little bit of courage to get it going and a little bit of pain probably at the start to make it land and to make it a reality.
So thank you for that, and I like the leap of faith. It's always good advice. So thanks a lot, Jan, for your deep insights and offering us your global, thought-provoking perspective on this topic. Thank you for the audience and for the question. And Jan, looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.